I'd like to know that MGR was launched in 2005, soon after Friends of CIHR established its administrative office here, with the strong support of Master Emeritus John Fraser. He could not have been here today because of prior obligations with royalty in London. We acknowledge his prescience and guidance in the early years. He has written to us, and I'll read out his note at dinner tonight. Now, Principal Orbinski noted in his installation speech a couple of weeks ago, quote, Massey College actively cultivates leadership among junior fellows through engaged mentorship by intentionally shining a multidisciplinary lens on issues of contemporary concern. It's a good quote. MGR is emblematic of this notion, as we have fostered intergeneration dialogue in all our organized gatherings. I should point out that others, besides myself, were instrumental in the initiation of MGR, and amongst that small group includes David Goldboon, who's here today. I'd like to acknowledge him, and others that we'll learn about. This 20th anniversary symposium highlights the impact of MGR in Massey College life and the tremendous contributions of time and energy of junior fellow leaders in this dynamic. The program today also explores the professional evolution of past MGR co-chairs and reviews the impact of their Massey experience on life choices and career opportunities in addition to their leadership roles. Their contributions in the wider community are very evident, and we'll hear about this certainly in the dialogues session that Principal Orbinski will chair. There's no better way to celebrate this occasion than to honor the many individuals who have contributed to the MGR program year upon year. 10 of the past 28 co-chairs are featured in today's program. They symbolize the many leaders and volunteers of MGR. We ask them to recall highlights of their early experience at Massey College and their effects, both personal and professional. Their insights will be of interest given their own impressive accomplishments. Now, you'll note a program you have in hand, and it features details about the various speakers that I won't read out to you. You can read at your leisure, but of course I'll introduce the individual participants. The plenary section, which follows almost immediately this afternoon, features co-chairs' perspectives. Past co-chairs will address the impact of Massey College experience with vignettes and insights on diverse career trajectories and leadership roles that they each experienced. The first to speak is Dr. Victoria Arundel, 2008-2009 MGR co-chairs. I assume you all realize that this is being recorded for posterity and that you've all agreed to this because it will enshrine, at least, or less immortalize the first 20 years of our social, intellectual, and academic lives at Massey. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsors over many years. Their sustaining support is much appreciated, and I draw your attention to the back of the program that identifies these chronic supporters. Friends of CIHR, founding organization, Massey College likewise, the University of Toronto, Temerty faculty, the Departments of Medicine, Department of Surgery, and the Department of Family and Community Medicine, and the Diabetes Research and Treatment Center. The organizing committee of the event is also listed there, as also credits to some of the little activities that have gone on. I'd now like to call on our co-chairs of yesteryear in sequence and invite them one at a time to take the podium and reflect on their experience. And the first is Victoria Arundel. Dr. Arundel, 2008-2009 MGR co-chair. She's presently the Associate Professor, Department of Occupational and Environmental Health at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health. Victoria, please come to the podium. Tell us what you're thinking.
It's a bit of pressure to get it started. So thanks very much, Aubie, for the introduction and for the invitation to contribute to the program today. I'll try and be brief because I know there's a lot of folks to come. Thankfully, I did make some notes on my walk up from college. So I was a PhD student, I wasn't a clinician, and when I was the co-chair many years ago now, that was a bit unusual, and it's evolved over time to be much more inclusive and diverse in terms of the membership. And I think for me, it was really about seeing beyond my little niche of research and connecting with people who were doing different things. It was one of the things that attracted me to Massey, but Grand Rounds was really, I think, for me, where the rubber met the road, and I really got to connect. As Aubie says, I work in occupational health, so I do a lot of workplace studies with workers and measurement, but Grand Rounds actually really helped me in my professional career to network and engage with clinicians. Actually, I saw Dr. Tarlow on the screen there, who's someone I continue to work very closely with on issues of workplace hazards and respiratory disease and things like that. So it really, it helped me see beyond my work. It helped me make connections with other people. And I think the thing that I liked as a student, I don't know if others are going to agree, but it really was a place that you were supported in thinking broadly beyond, sometimes your direct supervisors and committee members. It was very focused, but here you could go in lots of different directions, and I think that's reflected in some of my work now, thinking about very basic measurement questions, but also policy-related issues as well, and feeling comfortable working in those spaces is a thing that I would connect back, I think, to our conversations around the table upstairs in pushing us to push things forward, to make them better, to try and find ways to make improvement in systems that don't always seem like they want to change. So I really appreciate that. And I think on a personal level, because Dr. Goldblum is here, I think there was also this support for students in terms of balance. And I remember you saying, you won't remember this, but I had a squash racket in my backpack one day. And I was, in the depths of my PhD, and you said, that is very healthy. Like this support for maintaining balance and taking care of yourself. And sometimes in research, that's not valued, but here you value that. And that was a good reminder, I think, for me personally, to keep going and to keep those balls juggling in the air. So I do think it's been incredibly useful. I learned from Dr. Angel how to plan events and how to speak to people of different levels, and made mistakes along the way, but you always supported and fixed as needed. So I'm really grateful for that. So thank you very much for your leadership. And I'll stop there. Is that good?
You didn't use up all your time. Did you take a question or
Oh, yeah.
two?
I'm happy to take a question or two. Yeah. Or not. It's okay too. Yeah.
You were mentioning some of the system level challenges that we're facing wherever you work.
Mm-hmm.
What things do you see Massey being pivotal in as far as economic support for system level changes or training graduate students things to solve the bigger problems we need that?
Yeah. Did people hear the question? So it's a bit about Massey's place and how we can push things forward. So actually, most of my policy work doesn't lie in health. It lies in labor within our provincial ministries, and I think that is something we are very uniquely positioned here to do, is to bring not just the health and medical folks, but to reach out beyond those walls, because so many of the challenges are beyond just the healthcare system. They're reaching into communities and workplaces and all of these decisions that are being made about the environment around us. So I think there's a real opportunity there to even make it a bigger conversation about how we can move the needle. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Victoria.
Yeah. Thank you, Aubie.
Dr. Rami Shukri is here. Please, Rami, come. Tell us what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Okay, thanks, Aubie. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I will also try to be brief. I think there's going to be some... Fair enough. Okay, so I did prepare some notes to, keep me on track for my reflection on my experience at Massey and with MGR. So I did come into Massey feeling quite unusual, weird perhaps. I had just completed 2 law degrees and was starting out in medicine. I always felt there was a connection between the 2 worlds, but was apprehensive and still am a bit about how to integrate those two worlds. So at Massey, I found that I was surrounded by other unusual people. Some might say eccentric, but smart, diverse, innovative, interested in leadership, in policy, in knowledge. I felt challenged, but in a good way, and it quickly became a home and a family for me. Eventually, even more literally, as I met my now wife here, and we even ended up giving our son the middle name of Vincent to reflect our connection to Massey. So we were surrounded by so much excellence and achievement, so it only felt natural to take on leadership roles. While I was here, I was elected as the Medical Society's president. That's the student government at the medical school, and was also honored to be the co-chair here for a couple of years. I went on to become a family doctor. I started my career up in Moose Factory for 2.5 years, serving the Cree people of the Western James Bay region. I still go back there as a locum. But I returned back to St. Mike's, where I did my residency, and I've been there for 9 years as an academic family doctor. So the most Massey and MGR related work that I've done, I think, is with respect to a partnership we now call the Health Justice Program. It's a partnership between our family health team and 4 legal aid funded legal clinics. We have a 3-part mandate. First, to facilitate access to legal aid for patients with what we call health-harming legal needs. Second is education, and third is upstream advocacy. So the education part has been the most exciting to me, and where I think I've most applied that spirit of Massey. We found that interprofessional education works best with co-design and co-delivery, not just one profession speaking to another. The work is now starting to bear fruit outside of our partnership. Even provincially and nationally, we were just piloting a curriculum for residents on identifying and addressing these health-harming legal needs. And we are publishing a textbook for a national audience on the topic through U of T Press. It's coming up in the fall. So it's really great to be back here today. I feel similarly to how I felt 17 years ago, challenged, but in a good way. Being with those on the panel here and on the agenda and in the same room with so many smart, creative, accomplished people is a true honor. The fact that they are fellow former co-junior fellows, friends and classmates is an extra treat. So I think that's what Massey and MGR can do best, is to convene for education, for inspiration, for debate, for fellowship, for support. And sometimes I think you can't easily pinpoint what you get out of a particular gathering. Nobody will probably remember what I said in 30 seconds, but it's something intangible and more akin to a spirit, a Massey spirit, but I know it's what the world needs more of. So thank you to Aubie and James and everyone for organizing this and for your vision, leadership, and support of MGR. Thank you. So I guess I'm on the hot seat for questions. Okay.
Hi, that was really interesting. So I like the expansion of the concept of the family health team, the multidisciplinary
Yes.
aspect of it. Can you give us an example of I think you called it health affecting legal problems?
Yes.
Can you give us one example?
Sure, I can give you several. I mean, the kind of the classic one that's used to justify these kinds of partnerships is asthma exacerbations. You know, we can deal with them in clinic, in the emerge, you know, give some extra puffers, some steroids, but if you realize that there's a housing issue, substandard, you know, not a properly addressed mold, for example, in a housing unit, you know, that person's going to keep coming back to the clinic. And if you kind of keep your blinders just to like, okay, asthma exacerbation, treat with X puffers and medicines, you're just going to miss the underlying cause. And it's also going to, you know, take a toll on the healthcare system without addressing that underlying cause. So that's one. That, you know, with income security, anything to do with, you know, we know that, you know, there's obviously a very strong correlation between income and health, and there are many sort of opportunities. So, for example, ODSP denials can be appealed, and if you can support somebody with increased income, you have a very good chance of improving their health, their access to medicines, things like that. Yeah, I can give you more. But
Well, thanks, Ravi. And besides calling us all eccentric, I wanted to ask you about just another little comment that you made, that somehow you found yourself swimming in waters of excellence, and that it seemed to you to be quite natural to then take leadership positions. Do you want to just expand on that, and relative to perhaps other experience at other similar kind of institutions? That'd be interesting.
Sure. I mean, I think there's, I think it can be intimidating to be, you know, surrounded by people who are accomplished and, you know, impressive people. But I found that Massey somehow did it in a way that was supportive and approachable and casual, so that, you know, it humanizes excellent achievements, and it's not just people that are out there kind of doing excellent things. They're people that, you know, they're human beings, and I'm a human being, and so I can maybe do excellent things. And so just kind of that informal gathering where you can learn about not just the excellent achievements, but people as people, I think made it very natural.
It's an interesting concept that I haven't really articulated before, but we're talking about normalizing the interval between studentship and leadership and mentors in the environment, and reducing that delta.
It's very
so
special.
That there's a kind of equalization in a sense, or normalization, and gives comfort, I believe, potentially.
Yeah.
Now, final question. In your life so far, almost 20 years, since Massey, have you been also mentoring? What proportion of your time is involved in mentoring the next generations? Because it's not too soon to be assuming that responsibility.
That's a great question, and I think I'd like to be more involved in mentoring, and I'd love to be more attached to the community here. Actually, being back here has been you know, real. It's reminded me, brought back a lot of great memories. But, you know, formally within my practice, we have a lot of students and residents that come through, and I'd like to think I mentor them in kind of family medicine, but not in sort of the broader, just not in family medicine exclusively, but in sort of broader kind of career development, and life and things like that. So I think one of my former students is back there, who'll be coming up shortly. So, yeah.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks for having me.
Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Alex Harris, 2013-2018 MGR. She's Senior Director, Nursing Practice and Education at Unity Health Toronto. As an investigator at Li Ka-shing Knowledge Institute, she contributes in that domain. This is at St. Michael's Hospital. Alex, please come up and tell us your story.
Thank you, everyone, and it's such a pleasure to see so many familiar faces and to come back home in many ways. This always feels like home, especially this room. So I'll try to build on what's already been said and not repeat, but I do already feel as if there's some themes, and it's helpful to highlight, I think, what we're all feeling in terms of connection and similarities with respect to our experiences. And I think in particular what stood out to me already, as I'm hearing from some of my peers, is around connection through differences. So coming to this, I mean, I was coming, doing a Master's of Health Administration and Nursing, and being, I think, the only nurse junior fellow at the time, and feeling a little out of place, and coming to a space where many of us were coming with different perspectives, but really with a shared vision and passion for health, and particularly, I think, in advancing the public good through that lens. So I think, again, that what stood out to me was finding connection, but through our differences, and understanding and exploring those shared similarities. For me, really, the theme of interdisciplinary exchange is what really stood out. I'll never forget my first MGR meeting. I think it was before I was even a junior fellow. A colleague had told me about Massey. I stumbled onto MGR, came to an event, and got speaking with a participant in the audience, and they were studying zebrafish and the social interactions or dynamics of zebrafish. But we ended up having this really long discussion out in the quad as we were exploring that, because I was studying the concept of social capital and how it applies to knowledge management more from a health leadership perspective. But there was a lot actually of similarities where we could learn, and I was deep in one theoretical body of knowledge and they were deep in another, and we actually learned a lot from each other that, for me at least, certainly informed my own doctoral work. So I think that interdisciplinarity has really stood out. Maybe what I'll speak to in particular, though, is now that I'm in more of a formal leadership role, I think that MGR in particular helped to foster that growth. I think you had mentioned it earlier about just trying and failing and learning how to do public speaking and organizing events and how to facilitate and navigate some of that. And so really, I think that leadership aspect and the importance, Aubie, of yourself and others in mentorship and support and guiding us through that and providing that safe space to really grow as leaders, I think, and scholars, and the importance of that. And I one particular example, so when I was here, I was involved in governing council, and I'll never forget one day at lunch, Aubie, I don't know if you remember this, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I know you're doing this governance thing and, you're enjoying that. Let me connect you with a colleague who's actually involved in the Banting Research Foundation, and they're looking for perspectives." And so that actually started a whole other path of my involvement for a number of years on the board of the Banting Research Foundation under the leadership of Dr. Kathy Whiteside. So I think, again, it was just another way to learn and grow, and Aubie was just very good, and others, many of our senior fellows, in just understanding what interested us and how to, that tap on the shoulder to just make those connections within the walls of Massey to help our growth. So on a final note, because our second question that we were tasked with was how MGR can shape a better future. And so, as Aubie mentioned, I'm at Uni Health, including St. Michael's Hospital, and every year St. Michael's has a fairly large, actually, medical research competition called Angel's Den. And it's always an opportunity to hear about innovative projects and support work that's happening. And often it's in the boundaries of different disciplines that those projects that win come, because it's really, that's where innovation and differences in pushing the boundaries as to what we know and what we're trying to do in health come. And so when I think about MGR, it in many ways is the beginning stages, or a bit of a microcosm for what I see grow into. And when I look at the scientists, and I know many of our past Massey folks are now leaders in that space and receiving those awards, but because it creates a space for that interdisciplinary exchange, and it's a way for people to learn early on how to collaborate across boundaries, how to know and navigate speaking a similar language even when we are coming from different perspectives and vantage points, which again I think actually is what is fostering right now, both here locally in Toronto, but more broadly innovation in health research and the work that's happening more broadly. So, okay, I will open it up for questions.
Hey, Alex. It's so funny to hear you say like the role of being a nurse in MGR. And I'm curious, over your time now as a professional, have you seen more nursing leaders, and what role do you feel the field's going forward?
Well, I think, and it harkens back to the question about what do you do for mentorship and how do you pay that forward? And so I'm very pleased. Maybe I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. If you want to stand up, we have a new MGR fellow or Massey fellow, junior fellow, who'll be starting this fall from our nursing faculty. And you reached out specifically to say, I saw you were at Massey. Let's talk about it. I'd be interested in joining the community. So I think a lot of it is how you mentor and have that presence and share how special Massey is more broadly to encourage folks who may not know necessarily about Massey, and hopefully help with some of that engagement. So yeah.
Alex, how do you spend your day?
Too many Zoom meetings? No. No.
And particularly, are you doing research in an ongoing way?
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I did my PhD, it was looking at the concept of nursing intellectual capital. So how you invest in knowledge resources, but looking at nursing as a case study and how that relates to how organizations do well or perform. And really it was a case for why it's important for healthcare organizations to invest in resources to support knowledge generation, whether that's research, quality improvement, different activities, and also its application and growth, and how that contributes to performance, competitive advantage, and organizations just becoming great and delivering excellent patient care. So I am still continuing that interest in how to look at the intersection between health research, nursing health services research, and some of the more management-oriented literature. And so in my role, I have the pleasure of both studying how we invest and build capacity in primarily nursing and health discipline clinicians to do research and apply that. And that's also part of my role, is to actually foster, advocate, advance investment in infrastructure that we do to help with that work. So it does come together. And yes, it's not all Zoom meetings. I was being facetious, but yeah.
Alex, you talked about very briefly about your interest in zebrafish
Yeah.
and social capital and healthcare. And then at the end of your comments, you also talked about learning how to collaborate across boundaries. So we hear this term multidisciplinarity. I've been using it myself for many, many years, and collaboration across disciplines and so on. But in your experience, starting here, I suppose, with the zebrafish, and all the way up to now,
Yeah.
what would you identify as core characteristics of that ability or that willingness to collaborate across perspectives?
It's a great question. I mean, I think part of it is, and we self-select in, right, in terms of wanting to participate and engage in Massey. And so already you're having a willing cohort of individuals who are coming to this really wanting to engage. But then part of what both the literature would say and what I've experienced is that you need to be intentional in terms of how you build those spaces. So it's one thing to say, everybody come together and let's be in a room and talk, but it's actually how you curate that, how you intentionally create those spaces. And so MGR, in my mind, is an example of how you build that, for lack of a better term, that infrastructure and be that intentionality. But of course, some of that too is also in the dynamic of the individuals and a bit of the randomness that comes with that too, right? But I think that's where Massey and MGR are around just a structure, a beacon for people to both want to come to, but also to create spaces where you're pairing senior fellows with junior fellows and facilitating that learning and knowledge exchange and growth is really important. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alex. Nice seeing you again. Just do a technical check. Is everything okay back there, Joe, with your recordings? Well, that's excellent. Next is Dr. Lisette York. Welcome, Lisette. It's been a while. Great to see you here today. And please come forward and tell us about your interesting career trajectory.
So nice to see you, Aubie, again. It's been, yeah, it's been about 10 years for me since I've been in Massey, so it's a real homecoming for me today. And nice to see Alex and Patrick and Katie and some of the other, now I guess antique. Would you call us? No, what are we? Some kind of retro? Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll figure it out by the end. And I wanted to start with an anecdote as well. Victoria had mentioned how David Goldblum had done some, even just wellness mentorship. And I had a similar experience where David saw me and I was here at Massey with my sister and he said, "It's just so good to see you here." And this was at the Massey wine grazing. So you might be able to connect the dots about what he thought of my extracurricular activities at that time. I don't know if it's because I was from Cape Breton or I don't know, East Coast, whatever that was. And speaking of that, Massey was really special to me coming to Toronto. I'm from Cape Breton. I'm from a really rural area. I had no medical doctors in my family, no researchers in my family. And, you come to this place, it's a big city, medical school, you feel a little bit like you can get lost in the folds really easily. And for me, Massey was kind of centered me within that medical community and made me feel like I had so much more to give than just being part of the mill. Sometimes you kind of feel that when you're in the medical system, especially when you're in a system that's stretched and constrained. I'm sure Alex could talk lots more to that. So as chair of MGR, I could learn so many skills. I learned how to be comfortable with speaking with senior colleagues, even though, again, medicine's quite hierarchical. I was on the bottom of the totem pole. It didn't matter who was here, any of the speakers, you were treated as an equal. And that was one of the feelings that I took with me, especially in my mentorship, now being in a place to mentor. I also felt that these skills were really pivotal when I went on to be a chief resident at Sick Kids and working with lots of different clinicians within the hospital, from the CEO to everyone and my allied health colleagues to my other residents. And then finally, in my career trajectory, so I ended up starting the Division of Adolescent Medicine at Western University. I'm there in London, Ontario now. And I should say it's been hugely successful from a mentorship perspective because previous to my initiation of adolescent medicine there were no pediatric residents that would go on to adolescent medicine fellowship. And in the last 3 years, we are 3 for 3. So we've had 3 residents that have gone on to adolescent medicine fellowship. So it feels like I'm giving back in a really living way. For me, I would like to say I identify with the eclectic comment that I feel that a lot of the things that give me inspiration and give me energy are many. And when it came to research, when I did my master's, even when I was interviewing for med school and fellowship and residency, all of those things, I felt this pressure to be narrow and to have a very clear idea of exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life in this one very narrow area. And I felt at Massey, I was given the space to say, actually, I am interested in everything, and I want to do everything, and I want to continue to do everything, and why should I have to give that up? So that level of collaboration helped support me to be involved in a number of areas of research that I'm currently doing now, from appearance and performance enhancing substance use in youth to supporting siblings of youth in gender care, getting resources and support that they need, HIV PrEP awareness for adolescents. I even do cortisol stress levels in hair for youth with substance use. I have research interests that are completely across the board, and yeah, I should have put eclectic in my, probably my definition, my bio today. But really, all of these things could not be done without support from colleagues, and I have yet to have a time where I've reached out to a colleague and said, I'd like to do this project, what do you think? That they've said no. So that all started here, and that all started in a place where I could talk to my colleagues about whatever you were doing, and you always had a positive response. And as long as you had the energy and the passion behind it and there was a need, it was going to happen. So finally, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our mentors, and particularly Aubie, with all of the faith that you've put in us as students, as now clinicians and providers and researchers to continue the work that we do. And it really is inspiring to create a network of mentorship. So I'm looking forward to celebrating today the work that Massey has done and looking forward to the next 20 years to come.
Thoughts? In your bio, it turns out that you were a Rhodes Scholar. Could you reflect on your experience in UK, in the health system versus Canadian system, and how that impacted your own career choices? And could you comment on that?
Yeah, when I went to Oxford, I was dead set on being like a bench side researcher, and it was there that I realized that that is not where my skills are. I need to be working with people. I need to be on the patient engagement side. But I did learn a framework for doing research that I've used and translated into all of the other projects that I do now. So it was really incredible training to have that set of skills. And when I came to Massey, I was kind of lost in the sense that I knew I wanted to do medicine, but I wasn't sure how research was going to play into it. And being inspired and meeting people here who have a variety of interests, have a variety of projects that they have going on, helped me to think, hey, this might be something that I can do myself. And also, I was really excited to learn that we had a wide variety of snuff that was here, and so that was one of the things that we did after. I was like, what is that?
Lizette, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned Cape Breton at the podium because it doesn't appear in your biography, and it's probably the most important aspect of your being. And I appreciate also your comments really about the non-hierarchical nature of Massey, although I would like you to call me Dr. Goldblum. But I'm struck by the fact that you and Rami and Jay are all physicians who are very attuned to the social context of medicine. And I guess the question is always, is that what brought you into Massey, or is that what you learned by being at Massey?
It's a good question, Dr. Goldblum. I think it's interesting. I think the common theme that I found at Massey was similar to what I found when I was into Oxford in the small colleges, and what that fosters is people who are drawn to a sense of community. So people who are looking for community, people who are interested in engaging with other people. And so maybe you could say that's social context, maybe you could say that's people that have a passion and want to share their passion with others and want to be around passionate people. Though I found both things to be true when I was here. And so I do think it's really nice to have a space that it is, fosters leadership, but it also fosters camaraderie. It fosters humility and understanding that others' work is just as important as yours. So that I would say that's probably for me one of my biggest learnings, and that's the connection I would see here.
Thank you very much, Lizette.
Thanks.
Now I'd like to invite Dr. Patrick Stedman, 2014-2016, MGR co-chair. He's in the Division of Neurosurgery, Department of Surgery at the Temerty Faculty of Medicine now at the University of Toronto. He's budding neurosurgeon. Here we are, 18 hours of procedure, right?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, I'm a resident, so that's how neurosurgery works. You're still a resident, despite all my peers. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I did go to medical school, that's correct. So yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. It does feel, like as a resident with faculty, still a little bit out of place, so I'm honored, but I guess that also speaks to MGR as a whole, in a place where you could ask questions. And for me, I guess the word that I reflected on when I was MGR chair and learning as a resident and fellow here was the sense of curiosity, kind of like Lizette just spoke about. So first of all, I prepared a little mark, which I just wanted to acknowledge, so when I came here because it was interdisciplinary and I wanted to learn about things that I was not studying. And MGR really offered that. The first symposium when I was a fellow was on equity in healthcare, something I'd always been curious about. But as a physics undergrad, I felt like I had no place to ask questions in. And then it ended with the science of stress, which I was doing my PhD at the time in neuroscience, which I felt then really did emblematic of it. And to add to that, Cheryl Reguer, who was some sort of University of Toronto position at the time and the University of Toronto graduate students were on strike, so there was some conflict. So I felt really much at the time that MGR was being run, that society really did interface with medicine in many ways, not just in the decisions we make in terms of the care we provide for patients, but also in other ways as well. I just want to share one thing about David Goldblum that hasn't been mentioned yet, which is that you drafted these poems every time we had a Massey Grand Round, and they were phenomenal and was a highlight of the time for me. That was the thing that came to my mind as soon as I remembered MGR. And in terms of how you I think it's reflected me, is it's made me think about my own career and my own trajectory, both in terms of mentorship. So as a resident, I maybe just be a resident, but I provide every chance I get to mentor medical students, people interested in medicine from all walks of life. And that's always been something that I've carried forward with me, and I think is so important. And then second, I think it's about being at the interdisciplinary places. So I did a physics undergrad, neuroscience PhD, and then I'm in neurosurgery now, which I guess sort of a little bit related. But the way I'm sort of looking my direction forward is looking at how we can take the oncology side of neurosurgery and think about it from a neuroscience perspective. So a brain tumor, of course, is something you don't want, but it also interfaces very much in how the brain normally functions. And there's research out there, which I've been able to engage with, which shows that both the activity of our brain, that what's happening normally as we live, interfaces and affects the pathology and progression of a tumor in the brain. So I think that's very interesting. It's just a perspective that people would never have thought about, or at least that was my understanding, thought about prior to this, and now is central to the development of new neuro-oncology treatments. And then lastly, I just really so grateful that this thing exists for me and hope for everyone else and those before and after. It really is a testament to your dedication as a mentor, Dr. Angel, and as well as everyone else that's been involved, both as other co-chairs and that legacy that's built, and to the future generation. But it's something that only exists because someone had a vision to make it happen. And I really am grateful that I was able to be a part of that, and hopefully I give back in a little bit with my few words today. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much. It's been a good experience.
Well, you win the contest for brevity. But there's more to consider. Not only the past, but the future. Do you have any thoughts or ideas how Massey College can enhance its impact in the health sciences community of students that come here, which is more diverse now than before? Before there were very narrow foci of interest, but now health sciences is so broad that it attracts a whole array of disciplines here. Have you any thoughts about Massey Grand Rounds in the future and how it might both expand and increase its impact?
Any topic to do with neurosurgery sounds great, but outside of that, I think just existing, to be honest, I had a friend who did a PhD in engineering who started a company that I was able to become friends with because of MGR, and I think that expands, to nursing, and then now, as you say, the scope is even broadened. Law with Dr. Shukri was a very early addition, but I think is very relevant to going forward, is just having all those conversations and all those people at the table for those conversations, and I think that's the vehicle you want. Just getting junior fellows here.
Right. I remember you, in your day, you were very interested in recruitment and encouraging people to come. How can we be more impactful in that regard, bringing the next generation of the health science student cohort into Massey? Are there any special ways to attract them, or is it just by hearsay and performance?
Man, I do not feel like the right person to answer that question. I'm like the quiet guy that sit in the back of the room. But I do feel like, I guess having role models, people, perhaps like at the University of Western with Lizette, who can speak about their experiences and seeing their successes, or like Alex had with her friend in nursing. I think that's exactly how it is. When I was closer to finishing Massey, there's several people who applied to be at Massey and then eventually became co-chairs, in fact, that were because of my expressed interest. I think that is the best way, hearsay, but and word of mouth, but otherwise, social media.
Social media is the answer. Eva?
Patrick, you described how when you first came, you were really interested in eclecticism in a way, and different approaches and different ways of thinking. Now you are enmeshed in an all-consuming, overwhelming activity as a neurosurgery resident. And I'm curious to know how, if you are currently able to maintain that broader vision and eclecticism, and if not, and it would be completely understandable if you weren't, whether you have thoughts about how you might refine that curiosity in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going through a stage where I'm actually transitioning now to more senior residents. I'm doing a postdoc, so I'm trying to think about what that is. I am somewhat enmeshed in it. I stay active. I've kept a lot of relationships with people who are outside of my definitive area, so that when I exist, and I also think like just being a human, like when I meet somebody, like not just thinking about why they're there from a neurosurgery perspective, but thinking about why they're there as a person. And I find that very helpful to remember that we don't exist just in one bucket, we exist in across buckets. And yeah, for example, I'm reading a book on how to care for people and like the crisis of care that comes outside of the hospital. It was written in the UK, but the idea of it is like, we think about hospital medicine or even clinic-based medicine, but so much of healthcare from a care perspective occurs outside of that. And then my mom broke her ankle, and I'm the only person who takes care of her, and so I've actually spent a lot of time at home, which is even harder as a resident. And it's made me think about how that book was just a book at that time, and now is a reality for me, and how that means so much more to everyone I've seen before, because all neurosurgery patients need tons of care that doesn't occur when I see them in the OR, when I see them in clinic, and I recognize that so much more now. So I think that's how my mind interfaces with the different eclecticisms. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Very interesting. Excuse me. Rachel, I wonder if you'd ask Jenny in the dining room if they can bring the coffee out, because I think we're probably going to end before the hour. So we should have it ready by the time we conclude. Next on the roster, I'd like to invite Dr. Catherine Dunlop to the podium, 2014-2016 MGR co-chair. She had the extraordinary experience of working during a strike period, so she has some interesting insights to share. She's currently a scientist at the Center for Depression and Suicide Studies at St. Michael's Hospital, assistant professor of psychiatry at U of T. Please come up, Catherine, tell us about what you've experienced.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten about the strike in a way. Maybe it was protective. I was a TA at the time as well. So, in between striking and working on my own graduate studies, it was quite challenging. I remember trying to wrangle with how to work with Cheryl. Thanks for reminding me, Patrick. So I think Massey always was something that had the sort of spirit of collaboration and engagement that really was attractive to me. And it was something that I had sought out pretty early in my education. I went to Etobicoke School of the Arts, which used to be an audition-only school, and I was a musical theater student. Didn't go into that, thankfully. And I ended up at Trinity College doing a neuroscience and bioethics degree, also a very engaged community where I also sought leadership positions. I was head of college there. My boyfriend, now husband at the time, was head of college. So going to Massey across the street seemed like a very natural progression to me. And I was introduced to Massey and to MGR by a former junior fellow who was a TA for me at the time, Massey Moyetti, who was a neuroscientist, and he was a resident Don across the street at Trinity. So I had some exposure fairly early on to these kinds of communities, and I knew right off the bat, having come here for a few symposia with Massey, that this is a place I really wanted to be a part of. Both me and my boyfriend, Sam, now husband, Sam Green, we both applied. We were both really engaged, and I knew this was somewhere we wanted to be. We were both non-resident junior fellows, so we knew that we had to find an in really early to get really engaged. He was really interested in some of the law equivalents to Massey Grand Rounds, and I knew that Massey Grand Rounds was going to be my home. My graduate program was in medical sciences at the Institute for Medical Sciences over in the Faculty of Medicine. It's a very distributed community with a lack of engagement. So I needed to find my anchor here for many reasons. And working with Patrick and afterwards Lily, the Science of Stress was our first co-chaired symposium, which was, I think, more in my wheelhouse. My graduate program was looking at non-invasive brain stimulation as a treatment for treatment-resistant depression. So we were using neuroimaging in cohorts of very ill people over at a Toronto Western Hospital. So the Science of Stress was really well within my wheelhouse. But the following year, which was Massey's MGR's 10th anniversary, was a little out of my wheelhouse, which was on AI applications. And so MGR really gave me the opportunity to explore those sort of connections within my own research in a home where academic diversity and excellence was celebrated, not just amongst the junior fellows, but I really echo what some of the previous folks have said on sort of our non-hierarchical sort of structure with senior leadership and senior academics within the university and broader healthcare community. I think working with you, Aubie, was really taught me a lot about planning events, slowing down. I think as graduate students, we always want to speed up, get our graduate work done, get the project done sooner. The event needs to be at a place where we're ready to go right away. And I think working with MGR and working with you, Aubie, really taught me to slow down, be comfortable around senior leadership, and ask for things that I needed. It also provided me with very helpful connections that I still leverage and use and celebrate today. I mean, I was very fortunate to win a Vanier scholarship in my graduate program, and then that turned into a Banting postdoctoral fellowship as I went down to the United States. And the connections through Massey still inspire me today, that celebration of academic interdisciplinary collaboration. So just an example, I'm very, very conferenced out at this point. We were at Society of Biological Psychiatry Thursday to Saturday, which was here in Toronto, all on AI applications in psychiatry, so continuing that theme. Just yesterday and this morning, folks in the depression group here at U of T were at faculty club, sort of post-conference, sort of workshopping ideas. So, one thing, two vignettes. The first is the symposium we got to speak on, which really got to marry ideas not just from AI, but my work in imaging and in depression, but also, we brought in people who do abdominal imaging to look at not just brain health and in that context in AI, but also body health. That's being sort of celebrated more in psychiatry these days. And then the second vignette is I was out for dinner on Friday with my former chair at Cornell, where I did my postdoc. And we were talking about some work that other folks are doing at Calgary, and a colleague of mine from Massey, who's a professor at Rice University, who's doing research in the philosophy of science and religion. Her work is on the good life in the oil and gas industry and how religion and morality in that sphere influences health outcomes. And one of Francis, my former chair's collaborators in Calgary, is really interested in developing an app for folks working in the oil and gas sector, so an app-based psychotherapy tool. And they didn't have anybody who had any, lived experience or any sort of insights into where there might be the roadblocks in developing such an app. So I thought, aha, I know just the person who used to do all these anthropological studies over at U of T, who knew her as a junior fellow. And so I think what MGR and working with senior leadership really taught me was how to not just be a leader in my own work, but how to foster collaborations and act as a leader to bring people together from disparate communities, philosophy, religion, and sort of the tech and app psychotherapy development. So thank you. I think it's been a really influential part of my academic journey, and many of the folks who were junior fellows at my time are still my very close friends today. So thanks. Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
My name is Shamsul Muqtadir. I live here in Beaches, East York. I came to Canada 15 years ago. I happen to be an employee of Global Affairs Canada in the capacity of as senior staff at the Canadian Embassy in Bangladesh. And my daughter, my only daughter, who was a nursing student at Fanshawe College, died last December. And she died out of suicide. She committed suicide, and she jumped into the Lake Erie, and her body was found 32 days after her death. At that time of suicide, I was away in Bangladesh, and my son called me. He said that my daughter went missing. And then we informed the police, and we were in deep stress for about 32 days. She was in the third semester of her nursing education. We came to know that she consulted her physician at the college on 3rd of September. And from 4th of September, she started taking antidepressant drugs. But then the physician did not inform us, the family. We were here in Toronto. I mean, her mother and brother. And later on, they said that it is, it is not as per law, because there is a personal privacy act in Canada. But we thought that it should be a part, the mental health treatment should be part of a participatory program, like her parents, immediate family should be involved in the process. And in a college like Fanshawe, where thousands of students are studying, for a physician or a mental health practitioner who prescribes, it's not possible for him to, follow up, because she messed up with her drugs, regular prescription drugs. She messed up, she didn't take it regularly, because she was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And you cannot expect such a juvenile person to be so much responsible. And so I think this shows a kind of a flaw, I think. Don't you think that the mental health treatment among our youth community should be given should we not revisit the way we should go for a corrective action? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for sharing such a tragic story, and I'm sorry that your family had to go through such a troubling time. You're totally right that there is this push and a pull with mental health care access and communication with loved ones and next of kin. the challenge is with suicide is that not everyone who expresses suicidal ideation goes on to make an attempt. It's very, very difficult to know. We don't have the heuristics, and we don't have the decision trees, unfortunately, to know who is truly at the highest risk. Suicide attempts are very rare. Suicidal ideation is quite common. And so you're right that doctors do have a duty of care to inform loved ones in imminent risks. However, we just don't have the models yet to really accurately predict who is at the highest risk. It's really challenging. So part of my research, I use neuroimaging to try and identify subgroups of individuals using large data sets. But unfortunately, I use this mostly in depression research to try and give people the right treatment the first time. Only about a third of people will respond to the first treatment they get who have a major depressive episode, so that's one big problem. But we don't have those data sets for suicide risk. Clinical trials typically exclude people who have a high suicide risk, so we're really missing a huge set of the population when we're collecting these large cohort or clinical trials. And so one of the goals of my larger research program is to try and build those data sets using neuroimaging to try and destigmatize and better understand some of the biological characteristics and social and psychosocial characteristics that go into risk. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kathy. But before you leave,
Yes.
a common statement. Sorry, a common statement amongst you and your colleagues was the extent to which the faculty members, senior fellowship, were supportive of the junior fellowship. But have you ever thought about the benefit to the mentors in your experience here? Has that ever come to mind, the extent to which that is an important element of the equation?
Yes,
That it isn't just unilateral.
Absolutely. I think now that I'm mentoring my own graduate students, this fall I had my first couple of graduate students, and I'm seeing some of my undergraduate RAs now go into med school or go get into PhD programs. I am seeing the reciprocal benefit myself of mentorship. I think that mentees challenge us in really important ways, both by inspiring our research in different directions, and I agree. I find it very, in of itself, very rewarding. Just as an example, one of my first graduate students, Ima, she's a hijabi, and we're really keen on trying to facilitate collaboration amongst communities where there is a lot of stigma and a misunderstanding of suicide research. So we've been initiating collaborations with a Muslim mental health and suicide lab over at Stanford, and I wouldn't push my research in that direction at all. So I think you're totally right that it is mutually beneficial in many ways. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. I think that point is understated, the extent to which there's a mutuality in the experience at college. The focus here is on the co-chair's leadership within the junior fellowship, but the senior fellowship has experience that are extraordinary over the years with that relationship. Maybe David Goldblum has some thoughts there. We won't ask him at the moment, but after the next speaker, I'd be anxious to hear his thoughts there. But the final speaker today is Dr. Daniel Schultz. Daniel, please come up. He is co-chair 2019-2020. He's Chief Product Officer at Oxford Cancer Dialytics. Please tell us what you do.
Thank you, Aubie. Thank you, Aubie, and thank you, Massey. And yeah, the title is not very self-explanatory, so it always gives me a chance to explain it, which is wonderful for myself. But before I get into that, I guess I want to talk a little bit about some of the questions we were given, and one of the central themes that we've been hearing today, about interdisciplinary collaboration and engagement, evidenced by the memories that stayed with us, but also by the backgrounds of the speakers, right? Showcasing from family medicine, public health, engineering, neuroscience. And this is clearly something that's left with individuals. But for myself, coming into Massey, this was a completely foreign subject. I was an organic chemist. I spent my days in the laboratory at fume hoods with no sunlight. And little did I know, though, coming through into Massey, I wouldn't just take a cup of the Kool-Aid that is interdisciplinary engagement, but I would drink the whole fruit punch bowl. And this is evidenced by what happened after Massey and after Massey Grand Rounds, where through the engagements, the people I met, the topics I discussed, looked on to take a lot of that and try to build and develop innovation. So for the last 5 years, I've been building a company with actually a colleague from Massey, and specifically from MGR, that was a previous co-chair. And so in that space, we've been building Oxford Cancer Analytics, Martin, really focusing on enabling curative cancer treatments through early detection. And now I would say my life every single day is about interdisciplinary collaboration, looking at the intersection of molecular biology and machine learning, growing clinical studies across 3 continents, 15 plus hospitals in India, China, UK, Canada, speaking with venture capitalists from UK, Spain, Canada, US. I don't think there is a part of me that doesn't do one thing anymore, but that really started here at Massey Grand Rounds, where I was transitioning from, as I mentioned, an organic chemist to then my degree in biomedical engineering, which itself forced me to really embrace the idea of engaging with others, but moreover, in a very tangible way. And I think this was brought up by another speaker earlier today about the focus of Massey Grand Rounds. It's an interdisciplinary research. It can't just come from or kind of organic. You can have organic inspiration, but really when you tailor that, you put yourself in a better opportunity to create your own luck, so to speak. And for myself, when I was working as a biomedical engineer and developing medical products, I needed to understand not just the technical aspects of different fields, but how do those products engage with different people? And I learned the concept of human factors engineering, where humans are factors in the design process. They're not just outcomes, they're not just someone you hand a product to, but you consider them in the early process. And that doesn't come through reading different textbooks. That doesn't come through understanding current literature. That comes from engaging with people that are working with those products or those patients daily or those areas. And so Massey Grand Rounds brought together scientists, engineers, clinicians, and gave me the opportunity as someone that was an organic chemist sitting behind a fume hood to engage with them in a very relaxed manner. And I learned how to ask the right questions. I learned how to think interdisciplinary. I learned how to engage. And then that's where I would say a lot of the ideas came from these different individuals, but then also kindred spirits. And so I met my colleague, Peter Liu, that we've been building the company with for the past 5 years. And so I guess the vignette that came from this was, the true embrace of a new way of looking at problems, looking at life, and that came through Massey Grand Rounds and Massey College. And then the second question, we're talking about how can Massey continue to endorse that. I think one, it was said before, is continuing to exist, creating that space. You have to create space for these opportunities to engage and give opportunities to the quiet organic scientist that has never really engaged with anyone to now in a trusted space, engage and learn and see what could be possible for them as well.
As you can see, we're built like entrepreneurs. And that represents an interesting subset of individuals. And over the past 20 years, there's been a tremendous emphasis on startup attitudes and encouraging young people to look to be innovative and get into the commercial fields as opposed to the academic stream. I have no idea what the number of Massey grads that ended up in that stream. Is there any knowledge in that regard? Because I remember early on there was an effort to hold seminars or...
There was. Yeah, there's been a few different efforts, Massey Entrepreneurs, different events, bringing in different speakers. One notable I remember was Daniel Debeau. We've had, so I don't know the exact numbers, but you're right, Aubie. It's actually astounding when you think about some of the outputs that have come out from entrepreneurship organically. There was no, once again, no club at that time that necessarily did that, but it's through MGR that actually spurred that. So there's been development of multiple companies, I think at least 3. I know 1 has been acquired already. And I think cumulatively, just based on different startups, probably over $50 to $70 million raised for Massey-related startups. So I think that's pretty astounding to showcase how creating these focus spaces for interdisciplinary engagement can lead to innovation and can lead to new ideas and new people meeting and developing.
It's an interesting approach. And of course, anticipating trends as startup represented over time. Now we're in the era of AI and its impact in every discipline and subdiscipline at the university. Are there questions or thoughts? Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We'll conclude. We've now made very good time with the program and had a good time with an illustrious array of co-chairs whose disciplines kind of span the horizon of care, of community mindedness, of education, and now startups and entrepreneurships, which I think is an interesting reflection on a domain of leadership that existed at Massey College, and I expect that it continues. So this group of 7 representing the 28 other co-chairs who've led MGR over the period have been impactful in their own right at many levels, including guiding hundreds and hundreds of students who've participated in MGR. Now, one of the things that I think is crucially important is the reciprocity that exists between mentor and mentee in this environment. And David, I primed you a little on your thoughts in that context, the rewards of mentorship.
Well, thank you, Aubie, for drawing me out of my shell. Before Aubie asked me to say a couple of words a couple of minutes ago, I was sitting here basking in warm memories over the last 20 years of engagement with Massey Grand Rounds. And I'm very flattered that people remembered me for my trivial contributions, which seems to be all I get remembered for. But honestly, it reminded me of what the joys were and are of being a senior fellow in an environment like this. The opportunity to meet people from disparate fields and to feel inspired by their energy, their intellect, and their creativity. And for those of us like Aubie, Peter, Ava, and myself who've had long careers and are really at the end, or we can see it from where we're standing, of our careers, the last joy, I would say, is in fact in mentoring the next generation. There's nothing more rewarding than not only being a passenger on their ride, but seeing the destination that they have and trying to help in a minor way to point them. And while junior fellows or mentees may feel like they're getting something from us, whether it's our time or our experience or our knowledge, let me assure you, it feels like we are getting a lot more from you. And it is like an energy transfer of excitement and new ideas. And it's also about our own social networks expanding as we meet new people. And I always have in my head the words of William Butler Yeats, who concluded a poem of his, The Municipal Gallery Revisited, where he said, "Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say my glory was I had such friends." And I hope that's the experience of everybody who goes through Massey as a junior fellow, as a senior fellow, because that is the richness that this building embodies. So all I would say to all of you who've been co-chairs or participants in MGR over the years is a giant thank you from the older people who've been on the ride. So thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We now have concluded this session of the program, and we finalize this by the distribution of medals. So the perspectives by co-chairs of careers is concluded, and we have coffee. But in conclusion, I have a gift from college to each of the speakers, which is our pins, our Massey pins that they should wear with pride. So I'll go around and other than have people walk around. Get it. Give each of them. I won't pin it.
I thought it was going to be an umbrella.
Anyway, we conclude this, and coffee and cookies are available. There's an interlude now, I believe, in the program for socializing and nutrition. So we conclude now and reconvene at 3:15 for Massey Dialogues, guided by Principal Orbinski as chair.